Welcome back to Something in the Wilderness. My name's Steve, and in each episode of the show, we select an Andrew McMahon song to discuss. It's almost always going to be either a song by either Something Corporate, Jack's Mannequin, or his most recent project, Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. Today, I'm glad to have a guest to help me out with this one. Just a note about when I have guests on the show. In order to select the song that we talk about, I usually ask the potential guest for a list of songs that are important to them, and then we narrow it down from there. I have discussed a song on the show pretty recently from this very same album that our song's from today, but I was intrigued enough to choose this particular song for this particular guest. Not only do I think this is a pretty special modern Andrew song, I would say that today's guest is a pretty modern Andrew fan. Welcome to the show, Noah.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so glad you're here. Why don't you start by telling us a bit about yourself?
All right. I am from Oklahoma. I am currently in college, so I am one of your younger guests for the show. I am studying for English education. Hoping to teach like high school. That's
cool.
That is definitely my thing.
You probably didn't know this about me because I probably never mentioned in the show, but I'm a former teacher myself. So I taught 8th grade history for several years. I was a school counselor for 9 years, and now I work for an ed tech company. But my background's in education. All my degrees are in education.
Yeah.
Right there with you. It's awesome.
Yes, it's a great profession that I am going to be honored to work in.
Congrats on being in the program and getting that work done. So how many more years do you have left?
I am in my junior year, so just next year.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Tell us, how did you get into Andrew's music anyway?
A lot of the earliest memories that I'll have about Andrew are going to be very vague because it didn't stick with me at the very beginning, though I do know exactly why I got into Andrew, so I can answer this one. I don't remember what year it was, but at the time my favorite artist was Billy Joel, and Andrew was going to be opening for Billy Joel at some show. And so that was actually how I found out about him, because Billy Joel notoriously never has anyone opening for him. So him having an artist open for him, I was like, oh my, I guess I need to check this artist out. Never ended up doing it until a little while later when I was looking. There was a local music store that I went to, and I was looking through, they had like dollar CD bin, and I actually found the first In the Wilderness album of all things, and at that point, that's when I started really getting into his stuff.
That's pretty unique. You know, I think you're the first person I've ever talked to or met that got into Andrew because of Billy Joel, and based on the fact that Billy Joel sells out giant venues, I'm assuming you're not the only one, young or older, that had the same path to Andrew McMahon. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was, like I said, at the time, diehard Billy Joel fan. So having someone open for him, I was like, okay, this guy's gotta be pretty special.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, but that was a cool way for Billy to put Andrew's music in front of a lot of people who'd probably never heard him before. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Andrew has said several times that Billy Joel is a huge inspiration for him, so it's great that his management company was able to make that happen. Good for him. And good for you for being able to find out about Andrew that way. That's cool. So I mentioned this slightly a few episodes ago when I talked about Birthday Song, but I gotta say, and you may have some feedback on this as a newer fan, but I was a bit thrown off by the new sound that Zombies on Broadway kind of brought to the forefront of Andrew's career, for most of that album anyway. Usually the type of person who likes to listen to the album all the way through, but, you know, with the way most pop artists release their music nowadays, usually hear a bunch of singles ahead of time. But honestly, I was feeling a bit exhausted by all like the dancey, poppy feel of the album. Although I will say I like most of those songs now. The first time through it took me a bit. But when I got to the end of the album and I came across the Birthday Song and the song we're talking about today, Love in Great Buildings, I was really pleasantly surprised. I was like, okay, this is back to the Andrew that I know and I really love. So today, we're going to talk about Love in Great Buildings, track 10 off of Zombies on Broadway, which was released on February 10th, 2017. So Noah, how did you first come across this particular song?
I'm not even sure if I ever streamed this album pre-buying it. I did. I'm sure I did. But yeah, it was definitely, actually, ironically, you mentioned Birthday Song and Love in Great Buildings, which same situation with me. I at first really didn't like it. Not necessarily didn't like it, but So Close was at the time my least favorite Andrew song, because it is very dancey, and did not enjoy it a lot. Since I would argue it's one of my favorite Andrew albums, but yeah, same situation for me in that those last two songs did stand out, and ironically, I was going to bring this up as well. to echo both of our sentiments is an interview by Craig Manning from 2017 where he interviews Andrew and specifically mentions that he says, and while I think there are songs that would appeal to any fan on your past project, especially the last two, 11 Great Buildings and the birthday song. So I found that it seems to be definitely a consensus.
There you go. Yeah, it's got, and maybe that was intentional. Maybe it was like, okay, I'm gonna find the new audience, or maybe it wasn't about the audience at all. Maybe I'm going to experiment here. I'm gonna try some different things, and then I'm gonna give something back to the fans that have been following me forever. That that I know they'll enjoy, regardless of what they think of the new stuff. Maybe that was part of the thing.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
So as you probably know, this song was written in Andrew's New York City apartment during his mission there to write and record an entire album in New York City. And then I also have a quote from the Chorus FM interview. Craig Manning, he actually, so he says to Andrew, the first thing that struck him about the Zombies on Broadway album is that it was obviously a New York City album, which is different from Everything in Transit being the California album. I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said in the article. And Andrew's response was, the New York record was supposed to be the follow-up to Everything in Transit, but I didn't get there because of what happened and getting sick and sort of getting into a different mindset. So yeah, there are parallels, but obviously I'm in a much different place now than I was when I made Transit. I think there were elements that were similar, and certainly getting to that place where I was ready to get to the East Coast and make an album. There is a moment when we realize there are parallels between past projects and music making for sure. And I bring this quote up now, not because you just mentioned the article, but it was just a happy coincidence that you did, but because, I don't know, if he had written the entire album in California, do you think Love in Great Buildings could have been a song that was written?
I would argue possibly.
Okay.
It's a non-committal answer. I think that at its core, it could be. Yet it feels inherently more powerful and more like it feels like it has a lot more weight to it given his age and his maturity that he later gained. So I think that it is a song that would fit, though I don't know if it would hold the same weight for someone who knows Andrew and like his life. I feel like that makes the song so much more powerful, like in the Wilderness works.
So you mean in comparison to it as if he had released it when he was in Jack's Mannequin?
Correct, yes.
To me, I guess it's probably the influence of knowing ahead of time that it was about New York City. I knew that before the album came out. So, okay, this song sounds like New York City to me. Would I feel that way if I didn't read that ahead of time? Maybe not. It's about older buildings. Maybe it could have been about other cities as well, but it just feels very New York to me, probably because of my bias.
Yeah.
Knowing what I knew going into it.
Right.
So the song was recorded at Arcade Studios in New York City and produced by Greg Wattenberg and Derek Furman, the guys that produced most every song on this album. The track was mixed by John Sinclair. Andrew performs the vocals, piano, and keyboard. The producers, Wattenberg and Furman, did the guitars and programming. And the percussion is credited to Furman and Andrew McMahon himself. We also have some background vocals by Ivory Lane, and I'm not sure if you know who that is, but I really didn't, but I saw her on Andrew's Dear Jack live stream last November, and she performed a song. So after that point, I did go up, back in November, I did go and look up some of her stuff. Before that point, I'd never heard of her, and actually didn't even realize that was her vocals on this song. So, but speaking of concerts, according to Setlist FM, this song's surprisingly been played 114 times in concert, and shockingly, to me at least, 7 of these times were in 2020 on either online live streams or drive-in shows. So because I follow him so much, I was lucky enough to catch 4 times that he played this on live streams last year. But even luckier, I would say, is I actually got to see this song played live in concert on the Upside Down Flowers tour back in February 2019 in Columbus, Ohio, where I live. And I got to say, that Upside Down Flowers tour was phenomenal, in my opinion. Like, he covered the spread of all Wilderness albums very well, but also just, trickled in a few Something Corporate and Jack's Mannequin tunes, which is really what I felt like I wanted at that time. Have you ever seen Andrew in concert before?
So yeah, no, I actually have not seen him in concert, which in itself is a touchy subject because I really would want to, obviously. And I have now owned tickets for 2 shows. For starters, he doesn't really come near Oklahoma. That's just the first point. He has come to like Texas, so like Dallas, and Kansas City, but he does not come to Oklahoma. I don't know if he ever has. I tried to research it, and I'm not sure if he ever has.
Wow. That's unfortunate. How far are those other cities away from you that maybe do get those some of those shows?
From where I'm currently at, probably both are about 5 hours. So not manageable for me,
Ugh.
and I'm fine with it. And
That's pretty far. That's a commitment though. That's like an all day, all night, overnight thing.
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I have tried to go to him now twice, and I own tickets for both of those shows, but unfortunately, a mixture of bad weather and COVID ruined both of them because I was going to see him on his tour with AWOL Nation, but that one got canceled completely. And then I was going to see him actually in Iowa, the Winter in the Wilderness tour. So on that day, it started like snowing really bad, and me and my girlfriend at the time, we ended up driving about, I'd say about halfway there, and then realizing that there's no way we can finish the drive and having to turn back around. So yes, I have tried to see Andrew, though I have never seen him.
That would be so upsetting to start driving and know that you just can't make it. And it sounds like you guys made the right decision not to stay out in that weather.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm
Awful,
sure it was
though.
the right decision, but it definitely hurts, especially because the show that I was going to see, I know he played Love in Great Buildings, and
Oh,
yeah, because he doesn't play it
course.
very often. So
Yeah.
I unfortunately, had to miss that tour.
So one time when I was living in Maryland, I drove about 4 or 5 hours to this college, also in Maryland, but it was kind of around the bay, so it was kind of a roundabout way I had to get there. I drove all the way over there, and I'll admit, I knew going into it, I researched it online. It was a show. I was about 5 years out of college at the time. It was a show for college students at that university only. And I was like, oh, I'll get in. Like, I'll walk up and I'll just buy a ticket, But I got there and they really were firm on the fact that you had to be a Salisbury University student to get into that show. It was Jack's Mannequin show. Must have been '07. Oh, my heart was broken. Not only did I drive all the way over there by myself, but just to be sitting in that parking lot, and I sat for like an hour. I was like, and the show started, and I was just like, he's in there playing right now. And I was a hardcore fan back then too. And I'm like, I'm sitting out in the parking lot while he's playing a show. Why can't I just be in there? Like, what's the big? And it was like, and tickets were like $5 too. That was the icing on the cake. It was like, I drove all the way over there. I could have just handed him $5. I would have paid 50. I would have paid more, but
Yeah,
needed a student ID. They were pretty strict on
yeah,
that. So
that sucks. That is rough.
heartbreaker,
Yeah,
man. That was, yeah. I'll always remember that though.
right. For better or for worse.
Yeah. Did you follow any of those live streams this past year? Andrew's live streams, like on Instagram and all that?
Yes, I believe I caught all of them.
Oh, cool. He played this one on one of his first ones. It was March 19th, 2020. So almost exactly a year ago from the time we're talking today. And I just remember him mixing himself a drink. And then, and then this was the first song he played during that set. And for some reason, I have these really vivid memories of that time. I don't know if I'll always feel that way about March 2020, but I've been reflecting a lot these past couple of weeks on like, where was I when it all started, and like that's one of the Andrew's live streams are one of the things I remember so vividly. Like I would just be sitting there on a Tuesday night or whatever it was, and I'd be like, okay, it's time to watch Andrew on my TV, like, and he'd play some music, and it was really comforting during that time. So really appreciated that. Did you have a similar experience or?
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean. I mean, especially since we knew so little about what was going to happen, it definitely was a more stress inducing time. I mean, not that it hasn't been since, but especially when we had just no idea what was going to happen. That was definitely a very bad moment. And so yeah, having those shows was something I really looked forward to. Seeing so many artists just move online and try to continue to keep up something for their fans, and especially the Andrew ones because they did always feel so intimate, so personal. I mean, especially like whenever, because occasionally like Cecilia joined and Kelly, and so those especially, like those were a much more intimate moment than you would get typically.
Yeah, and it was honestly one of those moments sitting on my couch watching one of those live streams that inspired me to start this podcast. So that's where it all came from. It was like, wow, I feel so connected to Andrew. I feel so connected to his music. I want to talk about it. After months of planning, I finally kicked it off and late in the summer. But and by then he had really slowed down on the live streams and moved on to other things. But I really appreciated that during the time.
Yeah, totally. I understand that. That's though it wasn't Andrew that sparked it. I used to run a YouTube channel just for fun, where I do music reviews and that kind of thing. And so I absolutely get just the want to try to connect with people and just share your love and thoughts on the work. I get it.
That's really where I'm coming from. So I watched him do one of his drive-in shows. I live in Ohio, and that was out in California at the time back in July. So I was able to watch it online, the live stream. But he did say a really cool quote about the song before he played it. He said, "This song is about how deep love, good love, durable love can last through even the hardest of times. I think it's appropriate for tonight." So I think, again, he was really speaking to his audience, speaking to people in general about what a hard time it's been throughout this pandemic, and helping them connect to something they needed. And he's right. It was appropriate for that night. It's been appropriate all the way through here. So besides Birthday Song, this was the only Zombies on Broadway song written solely by Andrew. He wrote this one in the same Brooklyn apartment that he wrote Birthday Song in. He mentioned in the Instagram live stream that he started with the beginning piano riff originally, and he said it was kind of a pain to play. He originally recorded it freeform, and since the piano melody varies so much throughout the song, he actually had to rewrite it a little bit as the band recorded it together in the studio. I kind of wonder why that is. Like, was it a hard melody to play, or was it hard to find the place where the other instruments came in at? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know, because I can't imagine it's that difficult. Though, I mean, just to really look into it, I could also wonder, because with that loop, the synthesizer that runs through it, like,
Yeah.
this is that the synthesizer is what you're referring to, correct?
I'm talking about the piano, but yeah, it's probably on a synthesizer. I don't know that.
Yeah. I wonder if
But it slightly changes throughout the song, and I
right,
think that's what he meant there. But I don't know.
right, yeah, I don't know, because yeah, it seems like it would be pretty standard. But my only thought may be, I do play piano myself, not well, I'll say, but having very repetitive things happen over and over is actually way harder, I would feel, as I've experienced, than just hard things, because it's just so easy to get out of rhythm, or to mess up one little thing because you get so in a groove with it. And yeah, so maybe that's my only guess.
Yeah, and I wondered if maybe he couldn't figure out what to do. Yeah, he knew he wanted other instruments in there, but he couldn't figure out what to do with it because it feels like a piano song. It could have been, and proven on the Instagram live stream, it works very well as just a piano song. But maybe he was just trying to figure out like where the rest of the instruments fit in. I don't know.
Right.
So, have you ever been to New York City before, by the way?
I have not.
I've been there twice, and I had to go back and look at my pictures to figure it out. I guess the Williamsburg area of Brooklyn is what inspired Andrew specifically to write Love in Great Buildings, looking at the architecture there. So that's why I asked. But, not knowing much about architecture, I don't know if there was anything different in Brooklyn than there was in Manhattan. But it also said, I also found on Wikipedia that the lyrics allude to politics, which kind of surprised me. So I knew about the architecture inspiring him. I knew about the relationship side, which I know we'll talk more about. But I don't know. I find this hard to connect to politics, but
Yeah, that is. I would get it, because especially if you're feeling very fed up with the political system, which is very common.
yeah.
If you're feeling fed up with the political system, I mean, especially like right at the beginning of the song, he talks about like stock market, and so I could see just the frustration there, especially if it was inspired by any kind of like failure by the government, just that overwhelming. I mean, because I'm sure everyone's experienced at some point just a total frustration over some decision, and so feeling that frustration, feeling like things are going wrong, and then being able to return to love and great buildings to
Yeah.
to show the permanence of it.
Cool. Well, I like that. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. That's why I asked. Awesome. So we talked a little bit about the sound of the song with the instruments. I want to talk a little bit more about that. So the piano or the synthesizer, whichever it may be, like I love the intro. It's a real uplifting melody that he comes in with. which is, I had to go back and listen to several Wilderness songs to be sure, but a lot of his songs have more of like dark drab intros. I don't know if you've noticed that, like, and I don't know if it's lower down on the scale and that's why it sounds that way. And I'll give you some examples, like some of my favorites too, by the way, Black and White Movies, Teenage Rock Stars, House in the Trees, then going back to the Jack's Mannequin era, Hammers and Strings as well. But this one's like super uplifting, feels inspirational almost. What do you think?
Yes, I agree, and especially I can get into it later, but especially when we get in really to the meaning of the song for me, that theme will come back up.
Okay. But I do like how front and center that melody is on the track. But I noticed the percussion comes in the second verse. And I did find it interesting. I don't know if you heard me mention earlier that Andrew was partially responsible for the percussion as well in this song. But I noticed it's like a real t, 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 like in the second verse that wasn't there in the first. So it really, you notice there's like a build from the beginning of the song, more instrumentation slightly throughout. And then after the bridge at the end, it's just like full on like more of a pop song, like the rest of the album as compared to what it was in the first two verses. So I thought that was pretty neat about that. So speaking of the sound of this song versus the sound of the rest of the album, how do you think this song, sound-wise or instrument-wise compares to the rest of the album?
I do still feel like it has a lot of that similar quality as the rest of the album. And I think, for good reason, it's in the same album. It's cohesive. Yeah. But yeah, it definitely does have a danceable sound to it. And I do think it fits in with the album. I think that honestly, this album is very well put together, not just in a songwriting way, but in a track list way and in a tone way, because you do have such a solid transition of sound. He's able to make a really cohesive sounding album, and I think it really does fit in with everything else.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. And so I think that's what the end of the song is all about. I think the end of the song is actually tying it back to the rest of the album, because it does sound like its own thing, the first verse, maybe even the second verse a little bit. But after the bridge, like I feel like that part of it belongs with the rest of the albums. Speaking of the bridge, I got to admit, and I'm willing to, anytime, and I appreciate you are too, anytime there's something I don't like about an Andrew McMahon song or a song I don't like, I'm willing to say it. Like, I don't like the bridge in this song. It actually makes me uncomfortable. Do you know the part I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yes, and I concur. It doesn't ruin the song for me. Like I said, I'd still consider this my favorite Andrew song, but yes, the bridge, it's not really even a bridge. Nothing happens there.
No, it's just hey, hey, hey.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
For those that are listening that aren't sure what we're talking about, the hey, 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 oh part. Yeah, you're right. There's nothing. It's almost like a transition. So maybe it's not a bridge at all. Maybe a transition would be a better musical term for it. Like I said, though, earlier, I think it was getting that from the ballad sound of the first two verses to the build at the end, which again kind of connects it to the rest of the album. So maybe there was a good purpose for that, but I feel like it could have been done differently and accomplished the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the whole song does a really excellent job at slowly adding elements and growing, and I think that is part of what I really love about the song, the slow build up through everything. Yeah, I could see it having function in that sense, because it does really set off a big final movement in the song.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think it does serve a purpose, though. Yes, I would prefer it to be a little different.
In fact, when I heard it in concert, not the Upside Down Flowers tour, I don't think it was really on my mind then, but when I heard it played like on the live stream last year, I almost wondered, I'm like, I wonder if he's going to do something different with that. But I'm sure he's not thinking about it that way. But like, as someone who loves this song so much, but doesn't like that part of it, like I'm waiting for it to change, but like, it's not going to change. That's the way the song goes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It is a not great transition, as we're calling it.
And I think we've already covered this, but in my opinion, I do consider it to be one of the best songs on the Zombies album. But more than half of that has to do with the lyrics, really, and we haven't even touched on those yet. Lyrically, to me, it's just stronger than all the other songs on here. What do you think?
I do agree. I think that there is a lot to it. I feel like specifically the In the Wilderness project has done this more frequently, of having just really songs that are not necessarily vague, but applicable to most people, very
Mm-hmm.
open ended.
Yep.
And so I think that while I do enjoy the lyrics, I wouldn't necessarily say that they are just these, super profound, really great lyrics. Andrew has written amazing lyrics, and I would not put these in the top. But it does leave such an open ended interpretation to it. Again, it comes back to how I actually perceive the song, and how that's why it holds so much weight for me.
Well, let's talk about the lyrics then, specifically. So there's obviously a lot of metaphors going on here. The first verse, I want to keep the lights on. I could raise the rents and resurface the pool. I could take the banks on, repay all my debts. What do you think he's talking about here?
You mentioned metaphors, and I think that overall, this is, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about the permanency of love, and how, if we're to assume it's about Kelly and he's writing about himself, not just some vague third person narrator,
Mm-hmm.
it's how, despite any kind of hardships, they're able to get through it. And so you see all of these things happening in this narrator's life, and all the things that are bad, but no matter what, you always come back to the love that is able to survive through that.
Yeah, and I think that is what the song's about overall. And comparing it to, so he's talking about an old apartment building, right? That needs to be, it needs to be taken care of in order to survive all this time. Whether there's a depression, whether nobody's putting money into it, whether there aren't even people around. It needs to be taken care of. And I think we can say that about a relationship too. They need to be fostered. They can't just be left alone. A lyric that I didn't, it may be in the second verse, a lyric that I didn't write down here is planting a garden. I think that's in the second verse. And I think that's actually a really neat lyric. I honestly don't go off on a tangent here for just a second. I honestly don't understand the one lyric, get my ass back to school. In the second verse, he changed it to get my ass back to you. But like, I was really hoping you could shed some light on this for me, because I have no idea. Like, get my ass back to school. Like, what does that mean in the context of what we're talking about here?
Yeah. I mean, it's not, I'm not gonna come in here and try to say, "Oh, I've got this," but
Yeah.
I mean,
No, your opinion only. I get it.
Yeah.
We're just talking opinions.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think that can be going back to, like, because you were talking about all these things that need repaired, and even internally, he's saying, like, trying to improve himself, like, through education. I don't know. It's hard, because I actually would compare this a little bit to Paper Rain, that specific line of just trying desperately to make something work, and because the most important thing is the relationship, so whatever sacrifices that might mean, he's going to do it.
I like that. And you mentioned earlier, you said an education, and it actually kind of made me think, like, maybe he meant not in the literal term, get back to school, but maybe like just get educated, or just, because I heard education, I was like, okay, get educated. There's a lot of ways to get educated besides actually going to school. So maybe it was maybe that was just a way of putting it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
right.
So he doubles down on the comparisons between the building and a relationship in the second verse with brick and plaster, beams and broken windows, shadows pass on the sidewalks cracking to the curb. So he's obviously describing this old neighborhood, or this old building. I want to keep the lights on, repair the foundation, maybe hire a crew. And I think that next line, if I'm not mistaken, is the garden one, right?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe whatever it takes to keep this relationship alive, whatever I have to do to work toward it, to rebuild this thing, is kind of the way I interpreted it.
Yeah, and I think that you do see, specifically in this, a little bit of a growing optimism. In the first verse, he's talking about things that he can do, but I think you also are, because you mentioned the difference between get my ass back to school and back to you, and I also think that you could see this as like a refocusing of priorities in a way, and
Yeah.
that, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he's first verse he's just doing whatever he can, and then by second verse he's really finding a path to do so.
So the chorus, love in great buildings will survive, strong hearts in concrete stay alive. Through the great depressions, yeah, the best things are designed to stand the test of time. I guess Great Depression is maybe another thing that article I mentioned earlier was mentioning, in regard to politics. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a historical reference more than a political reference to me.
Yeah.
The chorus to me brings it all to life. Like whatever I was thinking during the verses, the chorus is where it's at for me. I don't know what you think, but
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I mentioned with the slowly building, I mean, it's the real catharsis of the song is the chorus. I mean, I guess you could also argue the transition, but I wouldn't.
yeah, right.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue that's the catharsis.
Hard to argue that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like the big what everything's paying off to.
And by the way, if anybody listening has any other opinions about the transition in the middle there, that's different than mine, I will fully I want to listen to you. I want to hear what that's about, and maybe I could change my mind on that. I don't know. Maybe I would see the whole song differently. Because I love the song.
Now I can't do that. If you guys think if you guys think that part's good, you're wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, way to stay firm in your beliefs. I like that. I can appreciate that too. Yeah, I mean, like you said, just like the birthday song, the lyrics here are probably a reflection of how Andrew was feeling toward the end of his time in New York. Like, hey, I got to get back to what's important. I got to get back to my wife. I got to get back to my daughter, Cecilia, back to my life, and really work on it. I have work to do. The lyrics on this song, again, are so different from the majority of the album to me, or every song up until this point, tracks 2 through 9 anyway. Whereas it seems like he was talking about the excitement of New York City, or a lot of it was, not all of it, but the excitement about New York City and his journey to self-discovery, I guess. But this is kind of saying, okay, but I got to leave all that behind and kind of get back home to what's important.
Right, get my ass back to you.
Do you have a favorite line or even part of the song, like anything?
Yes.
I know what it's not. I know your least favorite part of the song.
No, I do have a favorite part, and it's going to be a very hard one to explain unless you go back and listen to the song. And maybe some people have caught it. Just for some reason, this is my favorite, so it stands out to me. Mm-hmm. It comes in. It starts during the second chorus, actually, and it's right after he sings "Love and Great Buildings Will Survive." There's a really distorted vocal that sings "Will Survive" after that, and it is very interesting. It's always been my favorite part of the song. Like I said, it's probably not something that stands out to everyone. For some reason, it just was one that I latched onto.
You're right. I don't know what you're talking about, and I've listened to that song a million times, so now I got to go back and listen to it again.
Yeah.
And I listened to it just before we started recording, too. I guess my answer is a lot more general. I love the chorus, and I love the intro to that piano intro to the song. But I will. After we're done here, I'm going to listen to the song again. I'm going to look out for exactly that piece.
I can't describe it anymore. It's high-pitched. It's just a distorted vocal, and I'm going to guess it's Ivory Lane because it doesn't sound like Andrew.
Okay.
To talk about Ivory Lane, just since I brought her up, I feel like her backing vocals are really great in this song. I feel like it adds a lot. What do you think?
See, I didn't notice backing vocals nearly as much on the album version as I did on the Dear Jack stream. And he did a stream a week after that back in November 2020 where Morgan was the violinist and she was singing backup vocals. And I feel like they gave the backing vocals in those versions much more prominence than they did on the album. Maybe I would enjoy the song even more if I could hear Ivory's vocals more on the album version, because I don't typically notice them, that's kind of sad.
Right. I'm interested. I want to go try to see one of these performances that you're talking about with it louder, because I do think it works really well with how soft it is. I don't have any deeper reason. It just sounds good. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm interested to go check out the live recordings to see what it sounds like.
There was an event, or this weird event on an app or a website called Nowhere over the weekend, and Andrew was on there and he played a few songs. It was kind of like a live stream, but we were in this virtual reality environment. It was really strange. But the good news is he played a few songs and he answered questions. And I actually got to ask him a question. I asked him if he had any new music coming out this year, and he said he did, and he's just signed a new record deal. Anyway, the reason I brought up the story is because he also said he's starting some kind of membership fan club. And he has so many of these live recordings of his concerts, like video and audio, and having people sign up for a membership, it's going to give him the opportunity to kind of share this with everybody. So he's just going to, so I think the Dear Jack Foundation show, he gave that as an example of that's one thing that will be out there. I can't remember if it was the Winter in the Wilderness or the Pen and the Piano tour. He said they recorded a lot of footage from. They're going to be putting all of that on the membership. So I thought that was pretty cool. So everybody will have an opportunity to check that out once that goes live in a couple of months.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, those versions in the fall were pretty awesome. They had the strings, the backing vocals were real prominent. Highly recommend it.
Yes, definitely want to check it out.
There are some other versions that you can find out online now of this song. So did you get a chance to check out that like bedstock version that Andrew did?
Yes, I did hear it. I love the cheap Casio piano that he's using. Yes, I did watch it.
So for those of you who haven't seen it, you got to check this out, and I'll put it in the show notes. He's playing a cheap, what I perceive to be a cheap little keyboard. Maybe it's not, but like a little keyboard on a bed. It like looks like a tent outside of a concert, and he's playing "Love in Great Buildings" just himself in this little Casio type keyboard. And it's amazing. Like, it's amazing this guy can just like grab this little keyboard and it make it sound so well. I had no idea what bedstock was before I watched that video, but I did just a little bit of research and found out that it's to support kids who can't get out of their own beds and raise money to help those particular kids. So
yeah, I saw that too, and I really like the idea. I mean, being is that now we have COVID and we're having a bunch of online shows, it doesn't seem quite as different, but yeah, it's a very I like the idea of it a lot.
Great cause. Yeah. So I recommend that bedstock version. I recommend the Instagram version. I'll put that in the show notes from March 19th of last year. And if you can get a hold of the Dear Jack show from last fall, highly recommend that as well. Noah, where does this song rank for you in the Wilderness catalog at large?
So for me, this song, it holds a lot of emotional weight for me. And I think that, like I mentioned, I think that there is a lot of value in the fact that the lyrics are so vague, because you're able to insert yourself a lot easier. But I feel a lot of connection to this as a college student. I definitely, when entering college, I felt like I didn't want to go, but I felt encouraged, to put it loosely, to put it lightly, to go to college. And so I definitely felt out of place, and it caused me to have, I guess, an identity crisis, for lack of a better word, just feeling like I'm not doing the right thing, not in the right place. And that extended to all things. And at the time, I had a wonderful girlfriend who I had been with. Everything was great. It just definitely, during this time, as I was panicking over all the other things that wasn't happy with in my life, it kind of ended up getting pushed out to all aspects of my life.
Okay.
And this song is a representation of that, because I was in a similar situation as the song is presenting. I mean, I wanted to make things work. I wanted to fix everything, and just, overall not hate what I'm doing. A pretty reasonable goal. So
right. All reasonable goals.
Yeah. So this song really does hold a lot of weight there, because it does remind me of all of that and just the identity crisis. And I do attribute this song to part of waking me up and realizing that I was going the wrong direction and that I wanted to go, just because of my college situation, which was ridiculous. So yeah, so that whole thing, I do feel that big tie between the lyrics and my own personal situation. And then just to end the story with the upbeat, I apparently was able to pull it off, because now me and that girlfriend are engaged.
Oh, wow.
To get married
Congratulations.
next year. Yeah, thank you.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So yes, it does hold a lot of weight to me. It is a very personal song. Do you have any kind of like personal connection to this song at all?
It's more of the general, comparing fostering a relationship, like I said earlier, compared to having to take care of a building to make it last a long time. A good foundation for a relationship will help it last, just like a good foundation, having the materials, the right materials to start a building will make it last a long time. And I can compare that to my own relationship. I've been married for 11 years. So that's kind of the way I interpreted it. And to me, I just related to Love in Great Buildings as that, like, that's the place I'm at right now. Like, I am fostering a relationship that started with a solid foundation, but there's still work to do to keep it going, to make it grow. Just out of curiosity, is there any of the Something Corporate or Jack's Mannequin stuff that you connect with? You weren't aware of it when it happened. Do you look back on that and say, hey, that's good stuff? Or is it more like, I don't really mess with that stuff. I just stick to the Wilderness era?
Something Corporate's never clicked with me, which is something that personally frustrates me because I want it to click with me. And it's not even for any specific reason. I can't say it's because it's too punk. That doesn't bother me. I listen to other artists in a similar vein, so it doesn't bother me. It's just, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. I never have been. And there's definitely a lot of Something Corporate songs that I do love. But specifically in the Something Corporate era, I am very much a mainstream fan. I'm Constantine, Woke Up in a Car, and others along that line. But yeah, no, Jack's Mannequin, absolutely love. Because Jack's Mannequin did come later, just being as I didn't realize Andrew had another project, and then going back, because that was recent. Jack's Mannequin would be 18 months, we'll say.
When you found out about Jack's Mannequin?
Yeah, and when I first started listening. So I really do enjoy Jack's Mannequin. I do still think that I prefer the In the Wilderness, but I really like People and Things, because it does feel much more In the Wilderness-y.
It does, yeah. It was different from the rest of the Jack's Mannequin stuff, but it definitely gave you a sense of where he was headed next. Are there songs from Jack's Mannequin or Something Corporate that you'd put in the same tier with something like Love in Great Buildings?
Yes, there's I'd say a solid 5 to 10 that are songs that definitely have always stuck out for me. Those being Maps for the Getaway, going to, because Something Corporate's easy. Constantine, I know. I'm very. It's the everyone's choice.
No shame. It's a favorite.
Oh man, how could it not be? It's great.
Yeah.
It's a great song. But that's probably it for Something Corporate. And then into the other albums, I really love. With Jack's Mannequin, I really love Amy I. That's always been a favorite. Crashin' is one that I've always really loved. And as everyone would say, all of Everything in Transit, of course. Yeah, Everything in Transit it deserves the praise it gets, I'll admit.
Yeah.
But those are some of my favorites.
So I found 2 articles where Andrew was asked which was his favorite song off of Zombies on Broadway. The Detroit News asked him right before he was coming into town to do a show which song was his favorite off of Zombies as it was coming out. I'm sure you can probably guess, based upon what we've been talking about all this time, what his favorite song was.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess it's Love in Great Buildings, but hey, you might pull out So Close because we have talked about that a few times.
No, you'd be right to say Love in Great Buildings. I kind of set you up for that one. And I like what he said about it, though. He said he feels pretty close to the song, and although it screams New York City to him, he believes it really could be about any city around the U.S., like a place like Detroit, where he was going for the show that night. But he went on to say, it was written toward the end of the record, and there's this old adage that you always love the last thing you wrote the best. But here's what's interesting. So it doesn't surprise me that he had a different answer somewhere else, but in a different interview, in the interview we referenced earlier from Chorus FM, I was surprised by the answer he gave there. So you might know the answer, but can you guess? So it's a song we haven't actually mentioned. Can you guess which song on Zombies he said was his favorite off of Zombies?
I didn't finish reading it, so you're getting a pure guess here.
I would have never guessed this one.
Oh yeah, no.
Flew out of left
I'm
field.
gonna go Walking in My Sleep.
You're right.
Whoa!
How did you do that?
I don't know. It's probably because that's my second favorite on the album, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
That's where I went with.
Yeah, that's really cool that you guessed. I mean, that's no prompting whatsoever.
Yeah.
That was completely live. Like, I just threw that out there. So I was like, there's 9 other songs on there, but I gave you a little bit of a hint with it's not a song we've mentioned, but we only mentioned I think 2 other songs.
Right.
So
yeah, that was a guess, I promise.
that's pretty sweet. Awesome. Well, do you have any other final thoughts on the song or the album or anything else you want to cover that we haven't yet?
Yeah, no, not really. It's a song that means a lot to me, as do a lot of his songs, because even the songs I didn't mention, he's definitely an artist that, I've got a personal connection with, as I know many people do. Absolutely love this song. Like I said, it hits a personal chord with me.
For me, it's top tier Andrew. near the top of the catalog for Wilderness, near the top of the overall Andrew catalog. I mean, I'd say top 15, top 20.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's up there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys again for listening. If you wouldn't mind rating the show on Apple Podcasts, that would help more people find it. Also, post a comment on one of our socials. I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to message me directly, email somethinginthewilderness@gmail.com. And of course, a big thank you to Noah for coming on the show to discuss the song with me. Really awesome time. Love discussing Andrew music with our fans. And I had a lot of fun. So thank you, Noah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Where can we find you online?
Yeah, no, if you're interested in highly political content, because that's all I post on my Twitter, it's just at Noah Estes _. Feel free, but if you don't want to see politics, I'd recommend you avoid.
And that's Noah, Noah
Estes. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening again. Thank you to Noah. Hope you guys enjoyed and have a great one.
Yeah, see y'all later.